everybody. I'm Camilla. This is Sam Bowie.
Hello.
Custom framer with over 20 years of experience, and we're here at Jerry's Artarama of Raleigh today, and we're doing demos of everything A to Z that you can do with your frames at home. So Sam is showing us how to take ready-made frames and get custom framing results. If you haven't seen our other episodes, he's already showed us how to select a frame, choose your glass, choose and cut mats, and now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of it, how to start putting things together and how to do so in a way that's archival, which means that it's going to last for years to come. You don't have to worry about your art fading or being damaged by the techniques that you use. So Sam, take it away.
Thank you, Camilla.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to talk about a little preservation, and that one of the first things that falls in that is glass, which I've already had a glass discussion. UV glass would be a preservation technique, so that's all we need to say about that. Now it's talking about mounting your artwork in an archival and preservation manner. So we have several ways of mounting, and there are probably a dozen different ways you can mount. There's sink mounts, T-hinge mounts, mounting strips. There's all kinds of ways to do it. I have two favorites, and I'm gonna go over those. The first one is the mounting strips, and this is a product all your stores have, all your Jerry stores have. It's a Lineco mounting strips, and they're kind of tricky to use. So what I do is I have my mat cut first, and I'll have my art like that. And you only need to do mounting when you're doing a mat. Or three-dimensional objects that need to be sewn down or glued down to a substrate. The reason is if your art's the same size as the frame, you don't have to mount it because it's not going to move. So you're good in that regard. So what I'll do, we're going to go over the mounting strips first. This is a nice little pastel piece we have. That's what can happen if you don't mount it right. And actually that's not a bad thing, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I line it up to make sure everything's where it needs to go. And that's pretty close right there. Then I'll lift my mat up, and we're going to use these mounting strips. And all these mounting strips are, they come two to a panel, peel them apart. It's a little plastic acrylic, and then it has a peel and stick side. So Katie, you got a good shot of that? All right, and the way these guys work, and I would use 4 of them on this. So I already got my art pretty much centered in there. They adhere to the backing. And what happens is that little piece of art or plastic, acrylic, anchors down your art. Now this is 100% archival, and the reason why it's 100% archival is there is absolutely no adhesives at all touching the art. And they anchor down. Now the thing you have to keep in mind, and I don't know if it's going to happen yet, you have to make sure that your opening for your mat comes inside of the plastic tabs, and these are kind of wide. I've actually trimmed them down to like 1/8 of an inch for pieces at the mat so that they don't show through the mat. That might be the case here because these are pretty wide, and I don't think I got a mat opening. This was a top mat on a wizard cut, so it's going to be a little wider. Not bad. There is that one showing right there, but you can always trim that down. But that's the 100% archival, so there's no adhesives at all against that art. And you don't even need to adhere your mat down to the backing board either, because it's all going to be locked into the frame. If this guy had been a little shorter, you wouldn't have seen it, but I would have figured that out before I cut the mat, what my opening needs to be. But that is 100% archival. That is the recommended way to mount a paper art against something, and it's okay to have it on all 4 sides in this case, only in this case, because I'll explain what can happen later. But that's going to hold everything in place, so you're good to go. Not going to shift or anything like that. And these adhesives are really, really strong. But I would recommend, if you want to do this, just get you a box of Lineco strips, and there are 60 of these strips in there, so you can do plenty. And I've actually crop them a little bit down if I don't need such a wide piece, or if it's a smaller one. But that's how they use the mounting strips. They're 100% archival, so that is the #1 best way to do it.
So Sam, can you give me a little bit more of an understanding of what you mean when you say archival? I've heard you say archival,
Sure.
heard you say acid-free. What does that mean in the long term for your artwork?
I cut myself somewhere. Oh, see? I'm a framer. And it just happened doing a demo. I don't know where.
Is your Band-Aid?
No, I'm good. I think I stopped. But yeah, so 100% archival with these. Like I said a minute ago, there were no adhesives against the art.
Okay.
So once this came out of the frame and I took all these off, this was loose.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it wasn't adhered to anything. A lot of adhesives do have acid in them, and they can cause foxing and burns to your art and things like that.
Foxing is?
Foxing is when, say like this paper right here, or this was a piece of paper, this is actually done on mat board. You had cardboard behind it, which is highly acidic.
Okay.
Cardboard over time is going to bleed onto your paper.
Right.
And if it bleeds out the face and you see little spots, those are foxing burns or acid burns.
Okay.
And it's the acid migrating all the way from the cardboard through the substrate to the face of your art. It's called foxing, or burns or anything like that. And I know most of y'all have seen like little old art and old diplomas and things with these little burn marks. That's because there's acid somewhere involved that migrated all the way and got out on the face. You can protect it from the front with UV glazing. You can protect it from the back with acid-free mat board or foam board, which is this, and your acid-free mat board, which is this essentially, because any overlap is non-acidic. So that's another part of your question, Camilla, is that's a buffered acid-free part of the mat board.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't have any acids in there, and it will be touching your art, but there's no acids.
Right.
And your art with the mounting strips is not adhered to anything, it's just anchored down. So that is what 100% preservation and archival is.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So you just made that really easy for us. And for those of you watching at your local Jerry's Artarama, your framers, your custom framers can answer a lot of these same questions for you, hopefully with less cuts.
I don't know where that came from.
And now it's gone, but
Yep.
yeah, so thank you, Sam. Anything else you want to tell us about
Yeah, I'm going to show you another way of, it is an archival hinging method, but there are adhesives against the art. This white tape right here, and we sell this on the floor as well in all your Jerry's, is the acid-free framers tape, basically. So the adhesives in there are acid-free. And the first thing most of you are thinking, well, just tape, and then put that on top. Yes, you can do it that way. The worst thing you can do with any adhesive tapes, and I've seen this especially from elementary schools. I had a lady came in one day and it was like I wanted to keep her peace because it was all the wrong things to use. She had it taped on all four sides, duct tape, masking tape, electrical tape, and scotch tape. Wrong, and wrong. And I was like, did you do that on purpose? And she said, no, I ran out of the tape of each roll. And I said, well, those are 4 tapes you don't ever use on art. You never want to tape it to all 4 sides. This wouldn't be so bad because it's on foam board, but if it was watercolor paper or on paper or anything like that, you only want to have it hinged on the top side. And the reason being is because paper can expand and contract with temperature changes and that sort of thing. And I've actually seen art tear itself because it's adhered on all 4 sides and has no breathing room or no flexibility, and it's actually torn itself. An archival hinging, the worst thing that'll happen is those hinges will give way, you're inside the frame, and that's all will happen. Your art won't be damaged, it'll just slip down into the bottom, you'll just have to get it remounted, and that's not a big deal. And this is going to be kind of tricky because it is a mat board instead of a piece of paper, but I'm going to do a T-hinge, and there's 2 ways I like to do a T-hinge. So I got my acid-free tape, run it underneath there. So the sticky side's up, so it's adhered to the back of the art. And then that way as well. And then we'll do our T. This is really, really easy. So it's hinged. It's hinged to the backing. Now, some people like that. I'm not a big fan of hinging it to the backing, and I probably didn't get it centered well enough. Well, look. Oh. Sometimes I do things right.
It's a natural.
And so it just, that'll stay right there. The worst thing that'll happen is that adhesive, that little T-hinge will free up, and that'll just drop down behind the mat a few inches to the bottom of the frame, and you'll just have to get it rehinged. And that's a good thing because it has all the movement left, right, up and down that it needs. It's not adhered on all 4 sides. It can breathe, it can expand and contract with temperature and humidity changes, and it won't tear your art. The worst, like I said, is it'll just fall down and just open it up and rehinge it. Now that's hinged to the backing. Now, if it's hinged to the backing and you have a little play in your frame and your mat goes like that, it's going to be crooked. You're going to see it, and you're not going to have a lot of play. So I prefer, and I've heard conflicting opinions that you shouldn't do this, but I've never had a problem in all of my years, and I've talked to several framers that do it as well. I hinge it to the mat. So I'll do the same T-hinge like this, like this. Then I'll get my mat board and lay it on top. This might be a little difficult because it's not flush, but so I got it that way. And make sure that that's all down. Then I come in and put my supportive T, or my anchor. And by anchoring it to the mat, so that's all good to go. Same principle, but it's against the mat. If that mat moves around, the art's gonna go with it. So it always looks square. You shouldn't have that much room. If you got enough room for it to do this, then your frame's too big. So your frame should only have, all frames, like this is 16 by 20. A frame that says 16 by 20 on the floor is 16 1/4 by 20 1/4. That gives you an 1/8 of an inch of leeway, so you're not forcing everything into it, and it adds a little play, a little breathing room. So it can move around a little bit, but that is my preferred method to do a T-hinge with acid-free tape. And again, the worst thing that could happen is it could come free off of the bat and just fall down, and you just rehinge it. But those are two types, or several more. I mean, there's probably 30 more, to be honest with you, but that is just for basic framing pastel. And doing the preservation, the mounting on that, we would have our UV glass here. If you wanted to go full bore, we put the rabbit guard around the frame. That's an aluminum line coat product, same company as this. And what that does is it keeps the acids from the wood of the frame migrating onto your backing board, your mat board, and eventually could get into your art. So that's a rabbit guard. Museum glass rabbit guard, these hinging techniques, that's 100% archival. And the mounting strips are the best way to go, but for all intent and purposes, this works as well.
Just want to reestablish what a rabbit is, if you don't mind pointing that out for our viewers.
Rabbit are furry little animals that bounce around in the woods and have big ears. Frame rabbits, spelled a different way, R-A-B-B-E-T, are the area that your art goes in. This is a rabbit lip, or the rabbit whip. And that edge, lip, or whatever you want to call it, it's usually about 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch. The rabbit depth is from the back of the rabbit lip to the back of the frame. And the rabbit depth dictates how thick your art can be, your canvas or your dimensional object. There's plenty of room in this frame right here for triple mats, UV glass, spacers, no mats, paper art, acid-free backing. You could probably even get away with a 3/4 inch canvas, although it might stick out a little bit. And because that's a narrow frame, if it sticks out, you're probably going to see it against the wall. If it was a wide frame like the plein air frames that we talked about, they are a 1/2 inch rabbit depth. You put a 3/4 inch canvas in there, offset clips, you're fine because the frame's 3 inches wide. You wouldn't be able to see it anyway. And that's what a rabbit is in depth.
Sounds good. Any other questions about archival or acid-free techniques for preserving your artwork? All right, well, thank you again, Sam,
not
for
a
your
problem.
time.
Yeah, you guys have been great.
Again, we've got other episodes, so make sure you go back and check those out. Like, share, comment, and if Jerry's near you, we have all the supplies that we use here today, and a custom framer just ready and willing to do these demos for you too. So if you have any questions, remember consultations are always free with Jerry's.
Yep.
And we'll see you on our next episode. What are we talking about next?
Next, we're going to be doing fitting.
Awesome. So we're finally taking all the techniques that we've learned and putting it all together. So we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks.